Hi, welcome to Governance Bites. I'm Mark Banicevich, and today it's my pleasure to spend some time with Richard Klipin. Hi, Richard.
Hey, Mark.
Richard is the Chief Executive Officer of the Financial Services Council of New Zealand. So that's a membership organisation with over 100 members, including banks, life insurers, health insurers, fund managers, and law firms and accounting firms and so forth. Prior to that, Rich has been Chief Executive of a number of organisations in Australia and has about 15 years experience as a Chief Executive, or slightly over that now. So thank you very much for your time, Richard.
Pleasure, Mark.
My first question for you is, being in an organisation with a few staff, you've only got half a dozen staff in the Financial Services Council, and you deliver a lot of work for the industry. How do you deliver a huge amount of work with a very small number of staff?
Sure. Teams are a little bit larger than that, but the principle's right. It's about leveraging our membership. It's about connecting with the marketplace. And whilst there are about 12 of us in the FSC, there's about 540 members of the FSC community that connect in our various committees. So it's about how do you amplify, and I think for most organisations, it's about how do you take your offer to market and then amplify it through your customers or your clients. In our case, through our members and through the various membership committees, and so that brings much greater scale and much greater ability to actually shape and guide and influence agendas.
Right, so, and many member organisations can work in that fashion, right, where they've got a large number of available volunteers. So it's about identifying the right volunteers and getting them involved in the work. Yeah,
I think it's you've got to genuinely be interested in your members and the people from your members who kind of engage with your organisation. It's not just a tick box. It's a genuine commitment to allow their voice to deliver. And so ideas and capability and information and roles to lead and guide are the way we've built our model.
Yes.
And so it's been a really successful way to able to foster the organisation's agenda with and through and by the members.
Well, with that kind of structure, with a large number of committees, because there's close to 20 odd committees in the Financial Services Council,
Yep.
How do you align all of the work to ensure that it aligns with the objectives of the organisation?
So getting your strategy right is important. Within our model, the board is the kind of chief governing organisation. All power comes from the board, it gets delegated. So that's important. But the strategy is signed off by the board. So if you're really clear on what your strategy is, that you're really clear on your delegated authority, and that you report on it and connect in it and keep it really focused, actually you can take great leaps in what you do. In our organisation, we've got a lot of competing priorities and a lot of different sectors that sit under our umbrella. So getting some, ensuring that there's harmony in what we're trying to achieve, whilst paying appropriate dues to each of the different sectors it's not only a challenge, but it's really tough to do. But the strategy has really helped inform that.
So the process there, I take it, would be that your team will put together a proposed strategy, take that through to the board, and a bit of toing and froing there, get a final sign-off from the board. And then, as I know from being on a couple of those committees, there's very strong communication of that strategy through the committees. And then the committees are establishing their work plans in alignment with the strategies. Those committee work plans are also being approved by the board, and then people go away and deliver them.
Yeah, that's right. But it's not just a top-down approach. So actually the FSC committee, the FSC team is responsible for developing the strategy, but we do it in conjunction with the board, but we actually do it in conjunction with the committee. So there's a lot of organic thinking that comes from the subject matter experts across the FSC community that feeds into the strategy, as well as the strategy coming kind of top-down. So the meeting of that means it's not top-down and imposed and very inflexible. It's very organic, it's very flexible, and it's very agile.
And that means you can draw on the skills and experience of all of the people that are on those various committees,
totally.
right?
Totally.
Yeah, fantastic. Well, the Financial Services Council is a not-for-profit entity. Its members are largely, although not exclusively, profit-making bodies, a large number of corporates. How does governance differ between not-for-profits and for-profit entities?
I think governance is a discipline, whether you're big, small, local, global, international, and it's the same, which is you've got to govern your organisation according to a bunch of clear rules and parameters and guidelines. How you implement it obviously differs if you're a large multinational entity versus if you're a small not-for-profit association. But the principles are the same. How you structure it becomes important. The FSC's always tried to govern really effectively because, of course, if you don't govern well, you really, really know. When everything's going smoothly and you're achieving all your objectives, you kind of know that there's enough parts of the organisation that are in sync.
Mm-hmm.
It's only when things go pear-shaped and sometimes seriously pear-shaped where you can then start to track and go, that was a failure of governance or that was a failure of strategy. And those are important lessons to learn. And certainly in my role, it's to make sure that we govern effectively and keep the connectivity between what we are trying to achieve at the board all the way through to what members actually want out of the organisation.
And which is kind of raising the point that communication throughout the organisation is an essential element of good governance, right?
Yeah, it's the glue, it's the oxygen, it's the oil. It connects it all together. And, you got to be open, you got to be transparent, and you got to always be on communicating because, particularly in the not-for-profit space, people aren't here because they have to be here. People are here because they want to be here.
Right.
And so signing on to the purpose and the vision, the mandate comes through because we've got to be effective communicating.
Okay, right, yes. Now you mentioned before about governance being fundamentally the same no matter size, geographic location. In your international experience, because I know you have quite a lot of international experience, are there significant differences in the governance that you've seen overseas from what you've seen in New Zealand?
No. I think what's different is the context. Who do you point into? Who are your stakeholders? How much room do you have to move and breathe? So, governance is governance, almost irrespective of where you are. But the context of how you operate and where you operate changes. If you're a listed entity, scrutiny is really high. If you're a global player, you've got to be in lots of different jurisdictions. If you're a football club, not-for-profit body, your stakeholders expect, but perhaps the pressure isn't as intense. So, you've got to be able to kind of span those different contexts and mediums.
Right. Okay. Thank you. To take a step higher, then, we've been talking about governance for a while. What is it? What is governance? What is the role of the board of directors?
Yeah. So the role of the board of directors is basically to govern the business, whatever it is. So they appoint the CEO, they sign off the strategy. As I said earlier, all power and responsibility ultimately feeds up to the board. So the role of director is a really important one. And the governance role is to ensure that the organisation meets its objectives, serves all of its stakeholders, and keeps the business solvent and on track.
Okay, cool. Thank you. In your over 15 years now of being a chief executive officer and the governance experience that you've got, what is the best advice you've been given related to either governance or leadership? You've shown great leadership of the Financial Services Council over the last 6 or 7 years. So, what's the best advice you've been given?
Oh, look, in a long career, there's been fantastic mentors that I've had the pleasure of working with, mistakes I've made where I've learned from. I think with a governance hat on is that, keeping things smooth and on track and delivering is really, really difficult, but you're only a heartbeat away from things going south. And so it's about thinking about the risks that are there and always working on the governance and never taking stuff for granted. Because, the difference between those two states, like I say, it doesn't take. It can be a really quick period of time. So that means being agile. It means being nuanced. It means having your finger on the pulse. It means being just on the case in terms of what your roles and responsibilities are. And from a leadership perspective, ultimately, everything we do is with and about people. So, grand strategies and grand plans and grand everything only happens when people are aligned, where people are in sync and where people are cared for. So, ultimately it's about the people. And I think that's the essence of leadership.
Right, that's a very strong point. Thank you. And a final question for you then, having experienced that, and what is the best advice that you would give to somebody that's stepping into the shoes of a director?
It's about all those things. It's about being prepared. It's about having a go. And all of us learn. We all learn our lessons differently. So for someone embarking on a leadership career or on a governance career, step into it with your eyes wide open. Speak widely, connect widely, mentoring. Getting connected to people who have been there before, who've seen the good, the bad, and the ugly is always really valuable. And then ultimately, it's about just jumping and jumping in, and boots and all. So it's been from my point of view, whether it's the local Waiheke Football Club, whether it's the St Thomas's local school board, I've had the opportunity to work in a lot of different contexts, both for profit, not for profit. The governance piece is always consistent. The people stuff is always consistent, and it's about just having a fairly decent grasp on that and someone to talk to that you can kind of mentor and counsel with.
Great, Richard. Thank you very much for your time. That's been a very interesting conversation.
Pleasure, Mark.
I'll look forward to seeing you soon, and I'll look forward to seeing you next episode.